for 55, what was that, Brad? I wasn't aware you were I think
How's that for you? Not too bad.
similar
Yeah.
to ours.
Good for me.
The reason we
I
did
get
it
to help, see it.
which gives the rate more
Yeah. Well, that's good.
Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the North Platte City Council meeting here on Tuesday, October 15th at 2024 at 5:30 p.m. Of course, we are here in the City Council chambers. Calling the meeting officially to order, we have an invocation by Pastor John Stone with the North Platte Berean Church, please. Pastor Stone's an old hat at this, so I don't have to tell him what to do.
Yeah, you know, the first time I did this, it was like, oh, just pray and be quiet. But if I can just take a second to just say thank you, we appreciate your service to our community. And I would love to pray over you right now. Father, thank you for these men and women who are serving. And Lord, we do pray that you would give them unusual wisdom tonight. And Lord, thank you for their convictions that you've put inside of them. I pray that even as they conflict and disagree, that they would be able to do so in truth and in grace for one another. Lord, I pray against any kind of division that the enemy would seek to sow, and instead pray that there would be honest and open challenges, but also that there would be a unity that comes out. Lord, for the good of this city. And Lord, would you reward them for the efforts that they are making on behalf of many of us? Would you give them insight into their constituents, compassion, and just a greater sense of really love for people? Thanks for them. Bless them tonight. In the name of Christ, I ask. Amen.
Amen.
I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Angie, roll call, please.
Present.
Brown,
Here.
Bull,
Here.
Lucas,
Here.
Garrett,
Here.
Flanders,
Here.
Rinker,
Here.
Here.
Thank you. A current copy of the Open Meetings Act of the State of Nebraska is posted on the wall at the back of the council chambers. Meeting procedure: the public may address specific agenda items at the pleasure of the mayor. If recognized by the mayor, please identify yourself by stating your name and address. Please address the council through the mayor and limit your remarks. We respect our city employees and request that any complaints or criticisms of employees not be aired in the public meeting. Concerns about employees should be brought to the attention of the city administrator or the mayor. Individuals in violation will be declared out of order. Consent agenda. All matters under the consent agenda are considered by the city council to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. Any city council member may, however, remove an item from consent by request. Item number 1, approve the minutes of October 1, 2024. That was 1A. Item 1B, approve application by TBS Liquors NP LLC DBA Bottle Shop for a special designated license on October 26, 2024 from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. at 514 South Jeffers for a product tasting. Item 1C, accept the report of the North Platte Volunteer Firefighters Service Award Program Administrator Scott Moses and have $11,000 approved in 24-2025 budget held in a trust at First National Bank of Omaha.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented. Second.
Motion by Reeker, second by Nisley to approve the consent agenda. Calling the question on approving the consent agenda, please. Consent agenda is approved. Thank you, everyone. Heading into the regular agenda. It popped up and said that it was approved, but
They got one of the TVs out.
I'm going to call IT and see if they technical difficulties with the TV. Okay, item number 2, approve the resolution granting continued authority to the Airport Authority of the City of North Platte, Nebraska for an additional 3.5 cent levy.
I move to approve the resolution granting continued authority to the Airport Authority of the City of North Platte, Nebraska for the additional 3.5 cent levy.
Second.
Motion by Garrick, second by Vols. Do we have any discussion on item number 2?
Mr. Mayor,
Streaker?
it's been a whole 2 weeks since we talked about this and I can't remember.
You would like to know what we're doing?
Yes.
Well, fortunately, we have some bond experts here. One of them standing there in a suit, so.
Mayor Kelleher, members of City Council. I'm Austin Partridge with Northland. We are assisting the airport through the bond transaction to finance a portion of the new terminal project. So the item that's on the agenda for tonight is a recommendation from the bond attorney, a request from the city to affirm the 3.5 cent levy authority that they can use to repay their bonds issued for that terminal project. So the the budget for the airport has already been approved. So this is just confirming that 3.5 cent levy authority will continue to stay in place over the life of those bonds for them to repay the bond. So although statute allows them to go up to 3.5 cents, we don't expect that they would need the full 3.5 cents to repay the bonds. We would expect that to be around 3 cents that they would need.
So if we didn't, how much increase in the levy do we need to actually pay off the bond?
So their current bond levy is around 1 cent. That was their bond levy for fiscal year 23-24. We expect their bond levy to be, which was approved at 622,000 for fiscal year 24-25, which is about 2.9 cents, right where we would expect them of what they would need to repay those bonds in the future.
So you're asking, the airport authority's asking for another half cent?
No, just to be clear, it's not a request to increase the levy as part of the, Austin, keep me honest here, as part of the bond process to sell the bonds.
Okay.
They're just requesting that the city council affirm that they have the statutory capability to go to 3.5 cents. So this is not a request for more money. It's just an affirmation of what the law says is really what it is.
So there's no anticipation of spending that additional money?
That's correct.
Okay, I understand what you're saying. I still guess don't understand the logic, but anyway.
Austin, can you talk a little bit about the logic behind affirming this in the bond process, please?
Yes. So as we're working through the approval process for the bond, the security for the bond is that 3.5 cent levy authority that they're allowed to use to repay the bond. So within that approval process, the airport board has a resolution that they approve on their end, and as they've done in the past with their bond issues, they've come to the city to simply have the city confirm that 3.5 cent levy will continue to stay in place throughout the remainder of those bonds as they're paying them down, so that they can include that when they go out into the market on their offering document, that they can say they have the 3.5 cent levy that's been confirmed by the city to repay the bond. So Mayor Kelleher is correct. This is not a request for an additional 3.5 cents. This is the 3.5 cents that they're given through statute. They are just asking that the city affirm that 3.5 cents will stay in place for their bond, so that they can go to the bond market and sell their bonds and place their bonds for the funding for that terminal project.
Thank you.
Mr. Lucas.
Councilman Ricker, one thing I just share with you is that in my profession, occasionally we'll buy some municipal bonds. And one thing that we'll examine is what's the allowed levy versus the actual levy. And if there's cushion there, that makes you feel a little better as a bond buyer, knowing that if they had another small project or if something changed, or that they've got some levy cushion to work with. So oftentimes a bond buyer will read the little capsule that guys like this write or the underwriters write that explains what the allowed levy is over what the actual is, and that cushion is seen as a positive for somebody buying a bond. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that helps, Ty. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Austin.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Thanks, Austin. Okay, calling the question on item number 2, please. Item number 2 is passed. Item number 3, action to adopt ordinance number 4185, authorizing the issuance by the city of North Platte, Nebraska, of its municipal improvement bonds in the aggregate principal amount of not to exceed 52 million in one or more series for the purpose of expanding and renovating the North Platte Recreation Center and Cody Pool. Lane, the ordinance, please.
Ordinance number 4185. An ordinance authorizing the issuance of municipal improvement bonds to be issued in one or more series of the city of North Platte, Nebraska, in the aggregate principal amount of not to exceed $52 million for the purpose of paying the costs of public infrastructure projects and to pay costs of issuance of the bonds, prescribing the form of said bonds, providing for the application of certain sales tax revenues and for the levy and collection of property taxes within certain limitations to pay the same, authorizing officers of the city to make arrangements for the sale of the bonds at a public sale or in a negotiated underwriting, authorizing officers of the city to designate the final terms, rates, and maturity schedule for said bonds within stated parameters, providing for a paying agent and registrar, approving post-issuance compliance policies, and providing for publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form.
That might be the longest one you've ever
I
read.
think so.
Okay.
I move to adopt ordinance number 4185, authorizing the issuance by the city of North Platte, Nebraska, of its municipal improvement bonds in one or more series as presented on first reading.
Second.
Motion by Garrick, second by Vols. Okay, everyone, this is in essence the beginning approval for the entering the bond market for the bonds that would pay for the rec center and Cody Pool remodel. That's really what this is about. Conveniently, Austin is here and he's helping us with this one as well. So what questions do people have?
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Lucas?
So we could discuss this a little bit. I'd like to make a motion to waive the 3 required readings.
Second.
Okay, motion by Lucas, second by Vols to waive the 3 required readings on this ordinance. Discussion on that.
Yeah, I might just ask if Austin could probably explain
Okay.
the reason for that consideration better than I could.
Yes. Mr. Mayor, members of City Council, hello again. Austin with Northland. We are serving as the city's municipal advisor and assisting them through the bonding process for the recreation center and the Cody Pool project. So the ordinance that's on the agenda for tonight will authorize up to but not to exceed 52 million, as was stated on the original ballot language back in November of 2022 that was approved by voters. We generally do recommend to waive the 3 reading rule for bond transactions. Like a couple reasons why. Generally, they are fairly time sensitive in nature, especially in our case as we look at the construction timeline. We are working with members of city staff to plan the first issuance that will provide the initial funding for those projects, and are planning to close that first issuance by calendar year 2024 in order for us to get what's called a bank qualified designation on the bonds. So anything that is issued under $10 million, we get a slight rate benefit to doing so in the bond market. And so in order to obtain that designation, we would need to close on the bonds by calendar year 2024. And so there are certain timeline requirements from the time that an ordinance is passed by city council from the time that we could close on the bonds. So for the general timeline of the bonds, and as we look at the construction timeline schedule, and start to work on the financing plan that will most likely be issued in multiple series over time to finance those projects, we would advise to waive that 3 reading rule so that we can get the first bond issue in place yet this year to provide the initial construction financing.
Mr. Lucas, any other questions?
No, I would just share with you guys, I guess I don't have a big concern about waiving the readings. Some of the items that we discussed are that I don't know that bank qualification is a huge deal today with bank eligible buyers, because banks are not buying tons of municipal bonds right now. We talked about that. Yep. But by having a bank qualified issue, what you would hope is that you have more buyers. But what I'm probably looking at more is by laddering out the timing of your issuances a little bit, you take some interest rate risk off the table by spreading out the issuances. And so I think the advice they're giving us makes a lot of sense there. But to dial that in a little bit, I guess, tighter, it goes by calendar year. The $10 million cap does, right? And so if there's $10 million or less in bonds issued within a calendar year, then you get to deem them as bank qualified, which all that really means is it's easier for banks to buy them. They can still buy non-qualified bonds, and people that are looking for quote unquote bank qualified bonds come into the market on those, right? Is that fair?
Yes,
explanation?
correct. Yep.
Okay.
Just to give everybody a very general sense of the bond financing plan for these 2 projects, is they'll be, I think the correct term is tranched out over the next couple of years. And so there'll be some sort of issuance this year, in this calendar year. There'll likely be another one sometime around the end of Q1 or early in Q2 next year, and then possibly another one in 26, somewhat dependent upon the construction schedule. And the schedule is really what drives this, because that's when the expenses come up and down. So that's the logic in doing the tranches. Given what the Fed has been doing, it's at least likely that we would experience a better rate sometime next year than we'll get right now. So we'll save money by doing more next year, most likely, than we will trying to do it all this year. That's the very simple version of the logic behind it. If you want to sit here till 9 o'clock, Austin can give us the really long version if you'd like. I'm just kidding. Austin's a really good guy. So. Other questions or comments? Ed? Oh,
Go ahead,
Don?
Don.
Doesn't matter. Okay, so, and Ty's probably got a heads up on all this, but so the bond, is this costing the city the 6% for these bonds?
So-
To do this, is this the fee that goes to the bonding company?
So great question. So the ordinance that's in front of you tonight is a parameters ordinance. So all we're doing is setting the parameter constraints for the bond. So we work with the city to set those constraints, and we usually build quite a bit of cushion in just to make sure that we never hit those constraints. So the constraints are the total amount that will be issued, the 52 million, but it also includes things like the final maturity of the bond and the not to exceed true interest cost, which is probably the rate that you're referring to on the parameters section. So that 6% interest rate was built in to say that is our parameter constraint for the true interest cost of the bond. So the interest rate on the bonds cannot exceed 6%. Otherwise, the city would not be authorized to issue the bond. So that is a protective measure that we build in for the city, setting those constraints for the bonds so that if anything happens to go outside of those constraints, the city would not be allowed to issue those bonds. So really good question.
So then follow up, I guess, as a customer buying muni bonds,
Yep.
what's the likelihood of your interest rate? Do you know, Ty? Do you know
To
what?
answer, I think Austin can answer a lot better than I can, but I would expect today if they were being sold a true interest cost somewhere in the 4% range or low 4%, is that about where the market's at? Maybe in the 4 to 4.5 range.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's what we would that's what we would be anticipating if those bonds were issued today, they certainly move around up until the city will issue those bonds and lock in the interest rates. But Ty's exactly right. The range that we would estimate would be around 4 to 4.5%.
And then let's see this. So the city, what's the deadline to repay this 52 million?
Yes. So state statute does require a 5-year call period on the bonds. So what that means is the city would not be able to refinance or start to pay the bonds down until after that 5 years is up. After that time, they can do any combination of refinance, start to pay it down, or pay it off if it makes sense to do so at that time.
So there's no time frame when they have to be paid.
No
out.
timeline for when the bonds would be required to be paid off, outside of the amortization schedule that they would follow for their general bond payments, which we expect to be 20 years.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Ed?
Mr. Mayor, thank you. So Austin, in the document here, it talks about which were issued by the city to pay for public infrastructure projects, including but not limited to the expansion of renovation of North Platte Recreation Center, revitalization, expansion of Cody Pool, creation of water park at Cody Pool, and relocation of the skate park. What does that mean when it says not including but not limited to? What else can this money be spent for?
It's nothing. The reason that statement is in there, Ed, is we discussed this when we went through the original approval, but that was a long time ago, and we've all had a lot of discussion since then, is because the way that the statutes guiding these ballot initiatives and bonds work is you have to be reasonably, Austin, keep me honest here, reasonably precise in what you're saying. So what that's saying is, the example I used is, let's say at the rec center, it made perfect sense to build a sidewalk that leads from the front door in a different direction than the sidewalk leads today. That sidewalk is not technically part of the rec center, but it is part of the project. So that statement allows for that. It does not allow us to go off and build baseball fields with that money or something along those lines, if that's what you're asking. That is not allowed. It has to be specific to those three things that were identified in the ballot initiative.
That's what I thought. I couldn't remember exactly what your description was.
Yeah.
2 years ago or whenever.
It's probably not the best example, but it is an example because I asked the same question the first time I read it, and that's the example that was told to me. So.
And then the other question that I have, and I think, Austin, you may have answered this, but under section 13, tax covenant bonds, bank qualified. Can this, I think you said that after 5 years, the city can refinance for a lower rate. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay. So what does this mean then, where it says it will make no use of the proceeds of which said bond issue, including monies held in sinking fund for the bonds, which would cause the bonds to be arbitrage bonds? What does that mean?
So that section of the ordinance generally talks about bond arbitrage. So there are specific requirements and restrictions on the city in terms of how much they can arbitrage the bonds, which means go out and invest the bond proceeds in certain types of investments to earn money while the bond proceeds are being spent for construction. So we would work with the city to make sure that they meet those IRS guidelines so that the bonds do not become arbitrage bonds. So those are just certain restrictions that the city has to meet to invest the bond proceeds.
Okay. I misunderstood the meaning of the word arbitrage, so thank you.
Okay, just to remind everybody, we're actually on, are we going to waive the 3 readings? So great discussion, but anybody have any questions or comments regarding waiving the 3 readings? Okay, let's call the question just specific on waiving the 3 readings, please. This does require 3/4 of the council to vote in favor to waive the 3 readings. Okay, 3 readings are waived. That item passes. Now we're back to the original number 3, which we've been having some really good discussion and description on. Thank you, Austin, and everyone else that's asked good questions. Do we have any other questions or comments on number 3 as amended? Ed?
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to vote for this. As probably most everybody knows, I wasn't in favor of the way the project is, the dollars being spent. But the voters spoke, and I'm going to vote in favor of the bond. I still have great concerns about the payment of the bond over time.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Woods?
I just have one question. The bonds will be repaid with a 1/2 cent sales tax, but what happens if that's not enough to cover, interest payments, or when we actually have to pay off the bond itself?
So I'll have Austin chime in here in a second, but just to give you a short answer, I mean, the city can use other sales tax revenues, not the 1/2 cent that's dedicated to the rec center. So just to this project, the way that the ballot initiative was written is that every penny from that 1/2 cent goes into paying this back as quickly as it can, basically, is how it's written.
I understand.
And so if for whatever reason the sales tax does not generate enough to make the full payment because it'd be 2 payments a year, right, Austin, roughly is how it's planned out. Then the city can back that up with sales tax from some other category out of the regular budget, or it could be backed up with any other form of revenue the city has, basically.
So from what I read in here, the city could make a special property tax charge of some type on city-owned people in the city.
Well, it could be backed up with any other source of revenue, and one of the source of revenues is property taxes. So technically that would be true, yes.
Okay.
Now, just so everyone's clear,
that's what I got out of it. I just wanted to make sure I was reading it right.
the 1/2 cent sales tax has been generating $320,000 a month or so.
Average, yeah.
Okay, and what does that work out to for a year? Make
About
land
3.9, almost 4 million.
almost 4 million, right? And our anticipated payments, Austin, based on what we know today.
Yeah, so as we're working with the city to model out what those bond payments would look like over the life of those bonds as they're issued, using really the most conservative assumptions that we have at this point, we do believe the 0.5% sales tax revenue that was voted will be able to cover those bond payments. Conservatively speaking, we think the total bond payments on the bond will be about 3.8 million a year. So as that sales tax revenue comes in and our assumptions, right as of right now, don't assume any growth in those sales tax revenues. So we're comfortable with those where those revenues are. Legally, for a municipal improvement bond, Mayor Kelleher is correct. There are some additional security that's written into the bond. Mainly that's for the benefit of the city in order to obtain a significantly better interest rate on the bond when they go out to market them. But they would be able to, which would be limited to their levy limits, but they would be able to use additional revenues if needed to repay the bonds.
Okay. Just have a couple other quick questions.
Yep.
Are we able to make any money on the sales tax that we've collected, while we're waiting to make the payments? Okay.
Yeah, it's an interest-bearing account, so
Okay.
yes,
So what is that, 1-2%?
somewhere in there. It just kind of
Okay.
varies, but
Better than nothing.
and I would say too, that's been collected since I think we got our first payment in June of 23 off of that, and so we paid some upfront costs, but I mean, there is money in that account, so we have some, I guess we're keeping a buffer or a cushion in there as well in case there would be some down months, but we are being very conservative, like Austin mentioned, so the sales tax will always be there to,
Yeah.
cover the costs.
I assumed we had some costs now. I mean, there is construction going on. And one other question, which I'm not, say I owned a bond.
Sure.
After what I understand from what I read is, I don't know a lot about it, is that after 5 years, you can't cash it in. You can't want to cash it in before the 5 years, right?
Correct.
But after 5 years, can I decide I want to get my, I just want to cash out, get what interest I have left and my initial investment back?
So you could sell the bond.
Yeah.
Assuming that the maturity you bought was past that 5-year mark. So if you still held the bond after that 5 years, if the city refinanced, you would get the funds back and they would reissue at a lower interest rate. You yourself, if you held the bond, there's no ability for you to cash the bond into the city, but there's nothing that would stop you from selling the bond to another institution or individual that would buy your bond at current market prices. Again, that would have no impact to the city. Once they sell their bond, those rates and terms are set over the life of the bond. But you as an individual, or if a corporation or a local bank purchases the bonds, yes, they can sell those bonds on the secondary market at whatever bearing market rate would be going for those bonds.
So I could hold this bond forever?
You could hold it depending on what maturity you buy of the bond. If you bought the 20-year maturity, which is expected to be the final maturity of the bond, then you would own that bond for 20 years unless it's refinanced or paid down or any combination of, then you would own it for 20 years. At 20 years, you would get that payment. The city would make their payment, you would get the cash, and you would return the bond to the city.
Okay, thank you. I was just
Yep.
trying to get a
Yeah, good
timeline
questions. Yep.
on how they would come back in.
Yep.
Okay, thank you, Austin.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Lucas.
One thing that I think's really important on the question you were asking about the dependency on other taxes is that the way I understand Austin's recommendation, it's to work off a 20-year schedule, amortization schedule. Well, if you run the projected tax revenues out at current rates that are going to be dedicated to it, it looks like it should be somewhere in that 13, 14, 15, maybe 16-year time frame, depending on exactly what our rates are in that. So by having that extra, say, 5 years of cushion, that should naturally create a cushion every year that then once we get ahead of it, so anytime a bond gets issued or refinanced, it's locked out of being refied or paid early for 5 years under Nebraska statute. So as long as you've got some bonds 10 years from now, 12 years from now, 14 years ago that aren't in that 5-year, can't pay them off, kind of think of them like in the little penalty box, you can't pay them off. You keep some bonds out of that to where then as you have extra cash, you can retire those out back to meet that 15 years, 16 years. So that 5 years of cushion that they've got in it, that's what really protects us from hopefully having to go to other taxing sources because we've got that natural built-in cushion of those additional years. So I'm hoping that that cushion should give us a very healthy amount of cushion where we should, unless we have a horrible economic change, we shouldn't have to go back towards other taxing sources on it.
Other questions or comments? Seeing none, calling the question on item number 3. As amended. Item number 3 is passed. Okay, item number 4. Authorize the mayor to negotiate and sign the Improvement Fund Grant Agreement with Visit North Platte.
Move to authorize the mayor to negotiate and sign the Improvement Fund Grant Agreement with Visit North Platte.
Second.
Motion by Derek, second by Flanders. This is the $2 million grant to the project that is the rec center and Cody Pool and skate park. Excuse me, 2.5 million. Thanks, Pete. I misstated there. And this is just signing an agreement, so we're all on the same page. Is in essence what this is. So, discussion. Ed.
Mr. Mayor, under item number, section 3, item number 1, it says the monies will be dispersed in the amount of $125,000 a year for 20 years. Payments will begin on the year construction commences. If you go over to the next page, under improvement fund, it says no money in excess of the annual commitment of $250,000 will be released beyond the paid receipts submitted. What does that mean?
Go ahead.
The item on the council agenda is to authorize the mayor to negotiate and then sign. So I have gone through and reviewed all of this, and I believe that to be a typo. And so we intend to correct that because the award was for $125,000 a year. And so I think that's just an incorrect amount that's in that provision that you're referencing there, Councilman Reeker.
So do we need to make a motion to amend?
That is my intent in allowing the mayor to negotiate the agreement. So we're going to clean up a couple of those items. So we're not necessarily approving the agreement as written in front of the council. We're approving it in substance, but not specifics. We're allowing the mayor to negotiate some of those things that might need to be cleaned up, such as the item that you referenced there.
On the other comment, I guess, a question that I have, if I'm not mistaken, I guess Visit North Platte, Nebraska, are they receiving pretty substantial funds from taxes on lodging?
I can go ahead and answer that. Yes, they are. So out of the occupation tax that the hotels collect, I believe it's a 4% goes towards Visit North Platte, and then another 2% goes towards the Golden Spike at this time. So yes, it is a tax-based pot of money that then they in turn award grants and monies to organizations that create that enhance the travel industry and recreation, and that back to North Platte and Lincoln County.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong. I thought they were talking about up to 6 projects that they would use the rec center facilities for. Is that right? Per year?
I don't know that I've heard a specific number.
I
and
haven't heard a specific number
I guess
either.
I thought I read something here that said that. I could be wrong.
And certainly, the overall goal of Visit North Platte is to get people to come to North Platte, enjoy the time they're here, and spend the night. I mean, basically, and so that they'll use our businesses and our restaurants and hotels and things like that. And that's the lens by which they choose which things they fund. Their logic, and I'm sorry, Lisa had another thing she had to go to tonight, so she couldn't be here, but her logic in supporting this overall project was that not only will there be gymnasiums and swimming pools and things at the rec center that people will come here to use, but they'll also having the lazy river and the Cody Park for competitions in the summertime and things like that. That was her logic in being able to support the project in the whole. So a specific number of things, if it's referenced in there, you probably have no more about than I do. So you have something in there?
Well, it is referenced in section 6 there that they're requesting up to 3 events for up to 6 days a year at a reduced fee or free of charge. So
Okay.
that is part of what they're asking for in exchange for the grant money.
I guess I'm wondering if the city wouldn't be better off to just assess them a fee for using the facilities as opposed to giving them $125,000.
We're not giving them $125,000.
I'm sorry,
They're giving
I
us
said that wrong. You're
$125,000.
correct. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I agree with you, but it would be better if they gave it to us. Yes, I agree.
If I, Okay.
Well, and I was just going to add that that provision specifically says either free of charge for those events or at rental rates which only cover actual operating expenses. So it would allow the city to charge some expense for operating. What does it say? Operating expenses, actual operating expenses. So we could figure out things like utility expense or maintenance fees, that type of thing, overhead for employees. So we could build that into what we would charge them. But under this agreement, as it's proposed, it would have to be an actual operating expense that we could pass along to them.
Well, I guess I would think that we should do that, quite frankly. And finally, I guess it just seems kind of odd that we're taking tax money from one entity to giving it to another entity that is supported by taxes. And it seems like kind of a circular way to spend money, but at any rate, that's my comment.
Donna?
Maybe this is just a starting point for negotiations. I don't know, but it says in here that they want to give us 2.5 million, the rec center 2.5 million for construction, but the construction is going to be completed way before that. So how they give us 125,000 a year, but this construction is going to be what, a couple, 3-4 years, and then that's done. So how does this 2.5 million go for only construction?
It kind of goes along with what we just passed on the bonds, because you're gonna have a bonding out of the construction, and so it'll pay off those bonds kind of in the same manner as the bonds for the sales tax. Do you have construction bonds that are issued for a period up to 20 years?
Okay, and then on the next page over here, it says supporting documents for expenses. I mean, are we gonna have to hire somebody to keep track of this? I mean, to me, it sounds like, and I understand, I guess, where they would want to know that, but where does that put the employees or the city in tracking all this money for invoices, receipts, photocopies, canceled
So the
checks?
city very precisely tracks all construction expenses during construction, right down to the line item. So won't be a problem. We do it anyway right now.
Right, so would there be additional labor costs for somebody to do this?
Should not be.
We do it already. It's
Well,
part of the
true,
project.
but then this is another project, so it's gonna take somebody some time.
Well, it's done with because we're doing the project, not because we're getting a grant.
Oh, okay. And I guess then I'm a little bit like Ed on that number 3. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I could support this unless this is a starting point for negotiation, because this,
You guys can make the city council, if you want to make a motion to change it, you can do that. But remember that the base motion is to authorize the mayor to negotiate, so. Mark?
Well, then, Mr. Mayor, I have a couple things I'd like to address. If this is a starting point for negotiation, this seems heavily favored for, the other side. There's something in there that after we've provided documentation of our 25%, match, that they can decide to only give us 75% of the donation. And another thing, that if they decide they don't have enough money, they don't have to give us the 125,000. I don't know, what would be involved in that. And then if the 125,000 is going to go to pay off the bond, I would like to see that in written language in the agreement. Doesn't really have anything to do with the agreement, but I'd like to see it in written language somewhere.
Did you take notes?
I can assure you, Councilman Woods, if this is approved and the mayor's given the authority to negotiate, I have several items that I've already kind of proposed that would address some of those concerns. The use of the funds towards bond payments, I wouldn't say that this would be an appropriate agreement to place that.
I agree with you on that.
But I certainly, to your point, as to whether the Visitors Bureau would continue to receive the benefits of the use of courts and things like that if they aren't providing money any further, that wouldn't make sense for the city. I would agree with you there, certainly. So we certainly have made a note of that.
Well, I'm glad to hear you all seem to not be too happy with it either, as it's written.
Every contract starts somewhere.
Yes, I get that.
All of that.
I was just voicing my,
Thank
what
you.
I see as problems.
Ty?
Mr. Mayor, thank you. You know, we want to remember this is them giving us money, and to give them the receipts they need to prove up that it got spent for their audits and stuff, I don't have a problem with. I'm appreciative of this from the city standpoint. You know, at first I was looking at it a little bit. I was thinking about it like you were, Ed, and I thought, wait a minute, okay, they're collecting tax, they're going around, and then it hit me that, well, unless my wife kicks me out of the house and I got to go rent a hotel room, that everybody from out of town is going to be paying this money, not our local citizens. And so if we assume that outside sales tax is around 35% of our sales tax revenue, or whatever that number is, this is going to grow that percentage a little bit, and of out-of-towners helping pay for our rec center, which I think is good. And also, as I watch their grants being issued, a lot of times they're 3,000, 5,000, 7, 10. So this is a big number for this organization. And Pete, I'm sure we appreciate your support on this, because there's probably 15 or 20 activities that may have otherwise occurred that won't occur because of this. So to see that kind of commitment from the Visitors Bureau tells me they're going to be doing everything they can to help us use that asset to the most of our ability with tourism. So I'm very appreciative of this amount of money from them.
Pete?
And if I might, you're exactly right, Ty. You hit the nail on the head. I sit on the Visitors Bureau board as a city representative. I abstained from this vote and discussion so that I could talk about it here. So I had no part of this, but the Visitors Bureau, yes, they get tax money, and they call it beds and heads. So they're trying to create experiences so that North Platte gets more tourism, okay? The one thing we were really missing in North Platte is an excellent venue for basketball, volleyball, swimming, Cody Pool. So when you have a venue like this, it will attract people from out of town to come play in tournaments. Weekend tournaments are a huge driver for our restaurants, our hotels, and gas stations. So that is, the hotels are paying the money right now, by charging a tax to their patrons. Restaurants and gas stations aren't, but they're appreciative of this. So it's like a vicious circle, but it's a good vicious circle. The more people you get here, the more tax we collect, and it's from everyone out of town, because none of us here, except for a couple of people that might have traveled from somewhere else to come testify here tonight, we're not paying it. So that is why the Visitors Bureau needed a big project, and we've never been able to land a big project, but the rec center with the 6 basketball courts, a brand new swimming pool, so you can host pool, swimming events and that. Now we finally, as a city, have a venue that can sustain all this. So it was a long discussion. The 2.5 million is a lot of money. It's a lot of money, but the Visitors Bureau is set up where if something were to happen, they'll be able to pay this. So I feel very comfortable with this, and I'm very appreciative of the Visitors Bureau doing this for the city so that we can get, this was so we could get the nice things at the rec center, and that's what our constituents deserve. So that's my 2 cents.
Pete, just a quick question, since you're associates, I'll come back to you,
That's
Donna.
okay.
With Visitors Bureau, I know Lisa does not do anything, they do not do any grants without calculating the potential benefit.
No.
So during the discussion, since you were there, although you didn't participate. Was there discussion about the potential benefit to the community and local businesses and what that looks like from a monetary perspective? So the Visitors Bureau is not just blindly granting $2.5 million. They've actually done the math, right?
Absolutely not. The Visitors Bureau is the one organization in town that can really matriculate the dollars when people come to town, how those dollars are spent. And it becomes a very large number for our economy in North Platte. It's a tremendously large number. You think, yeah, you get 10 baseball teams in here playing a weekend tournament, they'll spend $100,000. That number, it turns over and over and over. You know, you think of a small 100,000, and I'm just throwing out numbers, but this is, you know, it's jaw dropping how much all this money will go back into the community and be respent and respent and respent. I wish I could articulate it better, but it's a big number. They didn't do this blindly. This is what the community needed. We always look down the road at other communities and how they're building these huge complexes. If you drive down I-80 about 100 miles to the east of here, they are building a massive sports complex. Lincoln, outside of Hawks Field, is building a massive sports complex. There's a reason. They're making a lot of money on this. So they're making a lot of money in tourism and everything else. So they're investing large amounts of money to get that return. It's a big thing. Tourism is a big thing in the world today, in the United States at least. So,
Donna?
Well, I guess I'm tax money going through here and coming through here. So I would rather not see so many restrictions on the money that's actually tax money anyway. The other thing is that it is not true that local people do not pay motel rooms. Before I moved into a house, my company came, I'm hosting them. They stay in my place, I stayed in the motel. I paid, and I'm not the only one that have paid. People do pay this in North Platte, just so you guys know that. Thank you.
Mark?
Yeah, I don't know, I guess I look at it a little different. One thing I think of is that, all the money that they get, well, it was granted to them by a city council who enacted the occupation tax. And this idea that, you know, we make all this, I guess you'd call it free money by people that stay here. We all go to other towns and we spend our money there. My kids were involved in sports. I went out of town. All we're doing, I mean, you can't really count that as making you money, because what comes in here, we go and spend somewhere else. To me, it's just a wash. And I really think that's the true math of it. I mean, you can calculate these out to where you know, this money was spent 12 times. Well, I think that's kind of a little bit suspect. This is the way I look at it.
Other questions or comments? Calling the question on item number 4. Item number 4 is passed. Item number 5, authorize the mayor to negotiate and sign the real estate purchase and option agreement with Midwest Land Development, LLC.
To authorize the mayor to negotiate and sign the real estate purchase and option agreement with Midwest Land Development, LLC.
Second.
Is that you, Ed? Yep. Second. Okay, thanks you. Motion by Garrick, second by Reeker. Discussion on item number 5. Mr. City Attorney, would you give us a little blurb on what we're doing here?
Yes. So what we have in front of the council tonight is an agreement that is dependent upon still going through the city processes that are required to sell land, which means that we'll still have an ordinance that'll come in front of the council. So we have other steps that are in play here, but due to some of the timing with the development plan and the project, we're presenting this agreement to say that, yes, it's our intent to sell the property that is out in the industrial park that's owned by the city, and to sell it in incremental pieces. And so If you recall, the council previously passed an ordinance to sell the entire parcel to Midwest Land Development. We did rescind that ordinance after the fact because of some of the, I guess, because of the way that their new redevelopment plan progressed through the Community Redevelopment Authority, and from what was eventually approved as a redevelopment project here by council. So what we're doing here is we're allowing Midwest to continue with its redevelopment plan to meet some of its deadlines that are set forth in the redevelopment contract. They're required to have this agreement in place before December 1st. And so we're putting it in front of council now. But I guess the point of my rambling is that you're going to see this back in front of you still. And when it does come back in front of you, it will be for the sale of the first of the industrial lots that will get subdivided off and ready to sell to them here pretty shortly.
Thank you. Questions or comments?
I think this is an exciting thing, quite frankly. This is probably going to be the largest housing development that North Platte has ever seen. Yeah. And I'm excited about it.
Going to be a good deal. Other questions or comments? Calling the question on item number 5, please. Item number 5 is passed. Item number 6, approve bid and authorize mayor to negotiate and sign contract for paving district number 837 with Paulson Inc. of Cozad, Nebraska in the amount of $2,147,703.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the bid and authorize the mayor to negotiate and sign contract for paving district number 837 with Paulson Inc. of Cozad, Nebraska in the amount of $2,147,703.
Second.
Period.
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Reeker, second by Mr. Woods. Any discussion? This is the much anticipated 9th Street paving project.
I just want to thank the council for working with us to get this thing done. This is a much needed project, and as you know, I don't like to spend any more money than we have to, but I think this is something that is definitely needed and has been needed for a long time. And this is a start. As some of you guys know, we've got some other streets on the north side that are probably just about as bad. And we've got another one on the south side coming up here down by Mr. Nisley that's going to be facing a similar circumstance. And so I think these are some streets that we really need to focus on and get them up to speed. But so thank you guys. Appreciate it. Appreciate the council and cooperation.
I would echo Ed's thanks for y'all working with us on this. And I do have no problem spending money on roads. I don't think we spend enough money on roads. And with everything that we've got developing, I hope the council remembers that and makes sure that we do keep enough money to keep up with the roads, because we're getting better, but I have to admit that we're still way behind. So.
Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to make one other comment. When this process started, I still had brown hair.
And I'm going to move and not see the benefits of this.
Okay, before this gets any worse, calling the question on item number 6, please. Item number 6 is passed.
Well, I guess I'll still drive.
Item number 7, approve the selection of equipment supplier and associated equipment per the council packet information Schedule A for equipment procurement package number 2 for the industrial wastewater treatment plant, and authorize the mayor to negotiate and execute the contracts. I'm doing a lot of negotiating here tonight. That's
Can I I just
Yes,
wanted,
go ahead.
I just want to interject. I did put a kind of a revised proposed motion out for anyone willing to make a motion here, just kind of wordsmithing the city engineer's language from the council materials.
Mr. Mayor, then, we're on number 7, right?
Correct.
I move to approve the selection of the company set forth in equipment package number 2 award, Schedule A, for the industrial wastewater treatment plant as presented in council materials, and authorize the mayor to negotiate and execute necessary documents.
Second.
Motion by Reeker, second by Vols. Brent, you want to give us, keep it under a minute on what we're doing here, so.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. This is the second equipment package that we have advertised for the industrial wastewater facility related to sustainable beef. And this is connected into the next item, which we're going to be assigning to Rice Lake West as they're fully ramping up to be 100% on board with getting the construction moving full speed ahead. So these are additional items if you're excited to read. Those sludge storage tanks, flow control valves, cranes, some other tanks, but it's all the process components. And the reason we're doing it separately is many of them are really long lead times. The shorter lead times are 16 weeks and some of them are 30 weeks. So we're getting them in the process now so that they can be here in less than 6 months.
Thank you. We reserve the right to call you back. So hold on. Ed's got his hand up already. So Ed,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Brent, are they in?
hold on. We need to make a motion.
No.
We made
Moved Councilman Bowles.
I'm sorry, I documented on the wrong line. I apologize. Go ahead, Ed.
I forgot my question. Okay, Brent.
We're quite a show tonight, aren't we?
Are they going to be able to get the liner in the lagoon this fall yet, do you think?
That's the plan, yes. There's 2 lagoons, and on the lagoons, there's 3 sets of liners. There's a double bottom liner and then a top. So the plan was to get one as far as they could, and some of it's weather dependent. If it gets cold, if we get 3 feet of snow in October like we've had, that might influence. And if it stays warmer, that's going to impact how far they get. But the plan ultimately is when we get to the first part of April that they want to have one 100% done and the second one shortly thereafter coming right behind it.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments? Seeing none, calling the question on item number 7. Item number 7 is passed. Get my documentation correct here. Sorry, everyone. Item number 8, authorize the mayor to negotiate and sign contract for amendment number 2, guaranteed maximum price number 1 with Rice Lake West in the amount of $10,086. Sorry, there's a decimal point typo here. $10,086,695.
Mr. Mayor, I move to authorize the mayor to negotiate and sign a contract for amendment number 2, guaranteed maximum price number 1, with Rice Lake West in the amount of
$86,695.
Thank you. That one, that number, yeah.
Second.
Motion by Reeker, second by Garrick. It's amazing what a dot versus a comma will just mess you up there. Okay. Brent, a little bit about what we're doing here, please.
So this is kind of connected to the last part. A year ago, we selected Rice Lake West to be a construction manager at risk on constructing the project. And with the change of engineers and created a delay in the process, and we're moving full speed ahead. And as we've been doing incremental bidding, the whole purpose was to keep things moving along, like the dirt work that's basically been completed out on the site. The lift station was bid separately, so the pumps are ordered. Those are going to be constructed yet this fall. So by doing some of these pieces, we're moving the process on. The simplest way normally is you get the whole project, you bid the whole project. That would be the ideal case. But with where we're at, that's not what we've done. We've been pulling out design pieces as we go. So this first guaranteed maximum price is taking the two equipment packages and the liner and putting it together under Rice Lake to manage and perform and get that particular work going.
Thank you. Questions or comments on item number 8? Donna?
I thank you. I just want to ask you, is this coming together better than the last time we talked? I mean, are you sleeping better at night?
I am sleeping better at night.
Okay.
So yes,
Need
thank
to
you.
know.
Good question.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Other questions? Oh, Mark, sorry. Go ahead.
Brent, are we gonna have a 100% guarantee on the labor on this liner? I mean, if the temperatures get too bad, are they just not gonna do it? Because,
Correct.
Okay,
Yep. They have a 10-year warranty.
yeah.
I
But if
work
but
when-
if they do it, we do get the full 10-year warranty.
Correct.
Okay.
They have some temperature cutoffs that they just
Yeah,
can't.
yeah, I
do it.
understand
So,
that.
As the liner gets very rigid when it
Yeah,
gets cold,
it's
and
not gonna work.
they can't weld it together.
Yeah.
So
Other questions or comments? Seeing none, calling the question on item number 8, please. Item number 8 is passed. Thank you. Item number 9, ratify all actions of Lane Grosseth, our LARM representative, identified in the minutes of the annual members meeting of the League Association of Risk Management of October 2, 2024, including election of nominees to the LARM Board of Directors.
Move to ratify all actions of Lane Grosseth, our LARM representative, identified in the minutes of the annual member meeting of the League of Association of Risk Management on October the 2nd, 2024, including election of nominees to the LARM Board of Directors.
Second.
Motion by Garrick, second by Lucas. Any discussion on item number 9? This is something we have to do every year. We have Lane on the LARM board. But anyway, go ahead, Ben. Go ahead.
Well, no, that's fine. I think you kind of answered my question.
Okay. And just every municipality or village that has someone on the line board has to do the same thing. So, and he promised me he didn't do anything that we're going to regret. So. Other questions? Mr. Lucas?
No, I just add that I think it's important to remember that we're one of the largest, by far largest communities in the pool, correct, Lane, still?
Us, Columbus, and Fremont are the largest. Yes.
So having that representation on the board, I appreciate that you dedicate the time to it. We need a seat at that table.
Other questions or comments? Seeing none, calling the question on item number 9. Item number 9 is passed. Item number 10, adopt the resolution amending the user fees resolution for fiscal year 2024-2025 for the electric, water, and sewer departments to increase the overtime minimum from 1 to 2 hours.
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt the resolution amending the user fees resolution for fiscal year 2024, 2025 for the electric, water, and sewer departments to increase the overtime minimum from 1 to 2 hours.
Second.
Motion by Reeker, second by Vols. Lane, you want to tell us what we're doing here real quick?
So this is kind of our agreement for overtime with our IBEW union, and even before was always 2 hours if someone gets called out for an overtime call. What we had in our user rates, if someone needed to have their water or electricity turned back on after hours, was a 1 hour minimum. And so this is just to align so the city's fees align with what we're paying our people to go do that. We looked at a lot of other cities as far as what they charge, and that's somewhat, we're still actually low on our reconnect fees for after hours calls, but this at least covers our costs.
Thank you. Questions or comments on item number 10? Mark?
Well, it doesn't sound like a vote's gonna do any good on this, but I've got a real problem with paying a guy for 2 hours when he goes out and works one. which if I understand that right, that's what they negotiated?
Well, it
Or
could take longer than that, but we pay them a minimum of 2 hours for going out. If they go, when they get a guy on a call, if they're off work and they have to come in and make a call, we pay them a minimum of 2 hours.
but if they work an hour, they get paid for 2?
Correct.
Okay, I still got a problem with that. You know what the job was when you took it, and I appreciate them doing it, but they know that. So, it's the way I am.
It's a pretty standard practice for on-call for jobs of that type. So the maintenance people at the hospital and many other places have that sort of approach. So, other questions or comments? Donna?
I guess I don't, what kind of calls would be considered after hours?
This is usually if
storm
someone's had their
calls?
power or water shut off and they want to turn back on after hours instead of calling during normal business hours to get it turned back on.
So it could be avoided if
Yes.
that's what you're saying.
Yes, and that's somewhat to hopefully encourage people to make those calls during regular business hours to have it turned on instead of after hours. They pay a different rate if they have it turned on during normal business hours.
So if somebody's called out because of a storm, how does that come into play?
Well, normally if there's a storm, it takes a lot longer than 2 hours for anything, so.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, this
This is
proper
basically, I
planning.
mean, Tony could maybe answer if I'm wrong, but it's mainly for this is for when they want their power or water turned back on after they've had it disconnected for non-payment.
Which,
I didn't want you to sit here all day for no reason.
So Mayor and Council, so what happens is we receive a lot of phone calls that probably should be handled during regular business hours. Okay, we understand that, and it also covers, we do get phone calls with no power that aren't chargeable. We get water calls, and if it becomes the residents' use, then they are the residents, where the resident has to pay for it, not us. They're the ones that have to absorb that time. Okay. It also, what Lane was saying, with disconnects, we have a lot of disconnects happen every month. And a lot of people avoid, for some reason, calling in during work hours. They'll call in at midnight, at 2:00 in the morning, whenever, to have us go out. And like Lane said, part of it is to avoid that from happening. It's not safe, I guess, is what I'm going to say for the guys, because it's an individual guy that's on call generally. And so to try to avoid that, and cover our expenses, the guys, $90 did not cover the expense.
Thank you. Other questions or comments?
It's Mr. Mayor.
No, Ed, go ahead.
Not a question, but it sounds like this is more to align ourselves with a negotiated union agreement.
That's part of it, and also to align ourselves with our peer cities on what they're charging for the same services. And a lot of them have raised theirs even more than this to try and, I guess, encourage people not to call in after hours and try to get it during normal business hours when your crew's there. So we're still on the low end of the spectrum as far as what we charge for the callbacks for those instances.
Mark?
Well, I can see you charging the customer 2 hours for something that they could do during hours. I don't have a problem with that. All the trades I work with, they come out and do something for me. There's an hour minimum. If they're there 10 minutes, I pay for an hour. I don't have a problem with that. They got to come out. I mean, there's other things involved than just the 10 minutes they're at my place. But the worker doesn't get that hour pay. I mean, he's there for 8 hours. He just gets his pay. That's kind of how I look at it.
Other questions or comments? Seeing none, calling the question on item number 10, please. Item number 10 is passed. Item number 11, adopt the resolution confirming the proposed infrastructure improvement project along East Francis is included within an approved redevelopment plan under the community development law and authorize the mayor to or designee to submit the City of North Platte Municipal Infrastructure Aid Program application requesting $1,595,315 in MIAP funds with the city match commitment of $531,772 or 25% of award, and authorize the mayor to sign all necessary documents between the Nebraska Department of Economic Development and the City of North Platte.
I move to adopt the resolution confirming the proposed infrastructure improvement project along East Francis is included within an improved redevelopment plan under the community development law and authorize the mayor or designee to submit the City of North Platte Municipality Infrastructure Aid Program application requesting $1,595,315 in MIAP funds with a city match commitment of $531,772 or 25% of award, and authorize the mayor to sign all necessary documents between the Nebraska Department of Economic Development and the City of North Platte.
Second.
Motion by Garrick, second by Nisley. Okay, this one's kind of murky. Kevin, you want to describe, and Judy, if you need to tag team, what we've got going on here. This could be a pretty nice thing for the city.
So I apologize that your motion was a little lengthy, but it was to confirm some of the requirements that are in the application. Mayor and Council, the application before you, this is really not the application. You're authorizing an application to be put together. But the program is a new program approved unanimously this year by the legislature, 47-0, authorizing up to $5 million to be awarded. In this case, after expenses, the state is going to award up to $4.4 million to any applicants, to a pool of applicants per se. So in order for North Platte to be able to be eligible for some of this money, we would need to put an application in. It does need to be a part of a redevelopment plan. So one of the redevelopment plans that City Council approved back on August 6th was the Midwest Development Plan. And one of those infrastructures programs within there was the eastern portion of future East Francis, which is an area that would be the eastern portion, just southeast of the industrial park. So the proposal in front of you tonight is the state would authorize a 75-25 split. So the numbers that Brad listed would be a huge potential economic development for this city, because all of that land in that area, or the eastern portion, potentially has no infrastructure. While it's included in the redevelopment plan, we're looking at 4 to 5 years potentially before that potentially even happens. For some reason that the redevelopment plan never comes to fruition, the city would have a low cost opportunity to put this infrastructure in, at a lower rate, potentially allowing Gary, the chamber and others to go out and market this land for future economic development.
Okay. Questions? Oh, sorry. Brad, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'm gonna clarify what I think I heard you say. If we were awarded this grant, we could sit on it to see if the redevelopment plan works potentially. Is that what you said?
So basically, the city would be committing a couple different things. You could do it a couple different ways. You can go right ahead, try to get it, speed it up 4 to 5 years, potentially get it run to the engineering team to get this on the 2025, 2026 construction, depending on how quickly the state awards it, if we were awarded it, and how quickly they could get the final plans and get things out for bid. The other portion, if we were awarded this, the city could then work back into similar what you guys did for Sustainable Beef with Golden Road. work the match portion into the redevelopment plan or a separate agreement to recoup the expense of the $531,000 match.
So in theory, let's say the redevelopment plan functions exactly like they're planning. They build East Francis. Could we then apply that to, say, East Leota or some other project within the
So
redevelopment plan?
we, the city, could not, but part of of an amendment or to the redevelopment plan, you guys could potentially require them to move that infrastructure somewhere else, or those dollars and cents, or into a public park improvements, or whatever that was, I know was, you guys were discussing during the redevelopment process, that were maybe dollars were getting a little tight to them at that point.
So these funds aren't locked into the East Francis. It just has to be part of the redevelopment
So
plan.
you have to take a portion of the redevelopment plan. So on your summary on the very front page, but the second paragraph is basically copying and pasting from the redevelopment plan. This is the infrastructure plan, the legal description that you would be committing to if you approve the application.
Interesting.
I can
Go ahead.
I can add a little bit to that too. So, if this application is authorized, it wouldn't be modifying or alleviating any of Midwest's responsibilities under the redevelopment contract. So, as Kevin stated, this could apply in a couple different situations. Say if the redevelopment plan didn't go all the way through all the 5 phases. This could help to finish off that street. It could also just somewhat, I guess, reduce some of the infrastructure costs for Midwest land development. So potentially, say if the grant application is approved, again, if the state awards the money, so a lot of ifs here, but if all of that happens, it could eventually just lower some of the infrastructure costs for Midwest land development too. They're still the ones responsible for it, so long as that redevelopment contract is in place. But what that means is it could lower the TIF costs that they would have.
So and I understand if it goes, if it doesn't go through, then we still get the road. That makes perfect sense to me. I think my question is more along the lines of, is this locked into it is locked into the Francis piece of it. So could we in the redevelopment plan do the East Francis piece, and everybody knows money is fungible, so we reduce their TIF costs. Could that be spent elsewhere for maybe a park or Leota, something along those lines?
Potentially. I'd have to look more closely at their redevelopment plan, and it's possible that it could require an amendment to their redevelopment plan.
Okay.
But it's possible.
Yeah, and I completely understand there's a lot of ifs in this scenario that I'm thinking of, but
The biggest one right now is just it potentially speeds it up 4 to 5 years for the infrastructure to happen now, and it takes if we're awarded. There's a lot of ifs, and there's only 4.4 million, so obviously we're asking for a third of what's eligible in this year's application.
Just so I can add something, that's kind of how I look at this, is it gives it a jump start, because this was in phase 3 or phase 5 of their redevelopment plan, I believe. And if the city can get this funding and go ahead and start from Newberry back, go to the west with this, that portion will be done a lot quicker than it would have been in the original redevelopment plan. And what that does is that opens up that area between Newberry and Bicentennial for development a lot quicker than what it would have otherwise.
And I agree with what you're saying there, but I'm always looking at the upside and how do we, I like to negotiate. So if we remove all this cost off of them and get it earlier, which would be awesome, where could that be applied to? And Leota is another option that would be fantastic if we could work that in somehow and start to build that out. So just a thought. A lot of ifs to go through before we have those conversations, though.
And that area was discussed, but it does not fit into the legal requirements of what the legislature approved. So we had to kind of stay refocused to this one, and then potentially if we get it to go back, that'll be where the attorneys get involved to try to put up a negotiation between them.
Yep. Nope. I think I'm up to speed.
Donna? Oh, hold on, Kevin. Come back.
I don't know.
Go ahead, Donna.
Thank you. So, the state passed this,
Unanimously, 47-0.
did they say where the funding for this 5 million is coming from?
It was I know it was a state, it just said the state treasurer needs to transfer it by a certain day, so it's probably sales tax or property tax revenue. It was not a federal, they didn't specifically say it was federal funds or anything else to that nature.
So if we do apply and are awarded this, is there some way that the local taxpayers are going to benefit from this?
Definitely in regards to the development that's going to happen. So you're gonna, anything that goes there is gonna bring jobs, it's gonna bring sales tax, property taxes.
I mean, lower property tax. Will this have some effect on that?
So every dollar that we bring in from a grant or sales tax is going to potentially help the levy.
Well,
It takes
hope
pressure.
so.
It's going to take
As
pressure.
Bill stated, it might lessen their TIF asking amount, which was shorten the TIF amount of time on the TIF.
That would be probably the only thing it could do, I think.
That's a huge thing, but yeah, that'd be besides what Kevin mentioned, as far as additional sales tax revenue and other property tax revenues, it would could possibly lower their amount of TIF.
Because government doesn't make money. It got this from us to begin with, so
The grant directly, you're right, doesn't generate a dime. But if we are able to extend what would be Francis Street back to the west off Newberry, and something decides to locate directly across the street from Sustainable Beef that generates sales tax from the city, how have we dropped the levy the last 2 years in a row straight? How? Sales tax. So the more sales tax we generate, the more we can drop the levy. So in an indirect manner, it has the
Right.
potential to help. So
Mr. Mayor.
go ahead.
Yeah, at first I had a lot of concerns about this application because if we're doing our job as a council and the CRA is doing their job, we shouldn't give anybody more TIF than they need for their project, but we should also think their project's economically feasible with the amount they got. So then it's like, well, all of a sudden we're gonna donate 500 grand to this project to get the 3-time match of that money. But I think the key is that if we would be awarded this grant, then to accept this grant and move forward with it, we would have to recalibrate. We'd have to recalibrate things, I think, on the other side. Maybe that's things occurring faster and whatever the economic benefits of that are. Maybe it's some amendment to the redevelopment plan like Bill suggested, or maybe that's increased public. But I mean, I'm 100% against throwing another $500,000 on top of what is already way down the road. But I don't think that's what this is about. I think it's that the state has tagged $5 million for things that are in very specifically, because I did a lot of research on this, are very specifically in redevelopment. And so they understand that if it's in a redevelopment, you're part of a redevelopment plan. And so I think if you get awarded this grant, there should be a way to dovetail this all together to where we just didn't kick $500,000 towards a project that's already supposed to be set up financially. I guess is that a fair way of looking at this?
Yeah, and there's other ways that 500,000 could be generated besides city
Right.
coffers for the match.
But I don't think there's any question that we should be scratching our head a little bit on this one. Of all the items we had tonight, this is probably the one that was scratching my head the most on over the last few days. So.
Other questions or comments? Seeing none, calling the question on item number 11. Donna didn't. Oh. Item number 11 is passed.
that was a tough one. I just want you to know that.
Disagree.
Done so much negotiating tonight, I keep losing my place. Okay, number 12, adopt the resolution authorizing the mayor or designee to submit the City of North Platte PRO housing application and authorize the mayor to sign all necessary documents between the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development and the City of North Platte.
Move to adopt the resolution authorizing the mayor or designee to submit the City of North Platte PRO housing application and authorize the mayor to sign all necessary documents between the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development and the City of North Platte.
Second.
Motion by Garrick, second by Vols. Kevin? Round two.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The application before you, we've completed all the legal requirements in regards to it at the last meeting in regards to holding the public hearing and the publication. The action before you this evening is to approve the resolution authorizing the approval of the application, which is due this evening. The pro-housing funds would take, even though it does note $450,000 commitment by the city, it's really ultimately not in asking for additional where you're going to have to come up with an extra 450,000. The city already budgets money for improvements of this nature. It's a very small increase above and beyond that to meet that 10% match requirement. So we potentially, if we were to get this, would probably be about 120,000 would be the increase over what we would be looking at over the next 6 years. And that's not necessarily even in dollars. That could be already labor that's already being spent on salaries and those types of things that would just be accounted for. But the main reason for the application is for many who know that we have a housing issue in this community. And for many, many years, things were not being built. And currently we have some issues with some houses that have been neglected for many years. In the funds that would, if we were so, it's a very, very long shot, but if you don't apply, you're not going to get it. So the application is basically there to help secure, and also if we're so fortunate to get the rural grant that you guys approved back in July from the state, we'd be able to basically take that program, which extend this until 2030, because this would be a 6-year program not from the feds. So basically what we want to do is basically go out, which the city already has a property resolution team, it identifies properties. We are not in the application committing to say that we are only going to focus on those. So there's not a particular property in the community in this application. It says we're tying ourselves that this property and this property only is the one that's going to be fixed. So if we were awarded the funds, then we would be able to go out and use these funds to fix some of these dilapidated properties that need some major, major attention.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Brad?
So these are federal dollars then we're applying for, correct, in this one?
This one is a federal application, yes.
And before we would accept that, that would come before the council with the full documentation of what we're actually accepting.
That would be my anticipation, yes.
Okay. But I just have some concerns with federal dollars. Sometimes they have strings attached to them and things of that nature that, yeah, I understand this is just the application. I just want to make sure we're going to see the full documentation before we sign up for a federal program. So thank you.
You're welcome.
There's always a contract with those federal grants, and
Yeah,
so the
I see.
contract would have to come back. So, other questions or comments? Seeing none, calling the question on item number 12, please. Item number 12 is passed. Item number 13, adopt the resolution, excuse me, adopt a resolution to approve a micro-TIF project for M2 Properties Ltd. or Limited for redevelopment of a vacant lot on multifamily residential located at 302 West Francis Street.
Move to adopt a resolution to approve a micro-TIF project for M2 Properties Ltd. for redevelopment of a vacant lot into multifamily residential located at 302 West Francis Street.
Second. Motion by Garrick, second by Flanders. Any discussion on item number 13? Okay. Judy, you want to talk about what we're doing here real quick?
Mayor, Council, this is another micro-TIF project. This one is actually redevelopment of an existing vacant lot into sixplex. I can answer any questions. It's pretty simple. They've got a list of expenditures, and with a micro-TIF project, all the list of expenditures have to meet the same standards as would be eligible for a TIF expense. And so that's why you do see that there was a little bit of reduction of agreed upon expenses. One line item was considered contingency. That's not something that can be TIF eligible. The rest of them look to be pretty reasonable expenses.
Thank you. Comments or question? Pete?
Just a quick question for Judy, because this does pertain to you. Forgot to ask you earlier, parking. Ample parking on that location for a sixplex.
So the design that I have seen, yes, it does have parking, the required amount of parking. Me personally, I wouldn't say it's ample parking, but yes, it is the required amount of parking that's required for a sixplex.
Okay, so no issues with zoning there.
I would add, Pete, that this went in front of our development group that meets city staff that meets every Thursday morning, and looked at it, and everybody was in agreement with it. So,
Okay.
it's been looked at by city staff as well.
Awesome, thank you.
Ty?
Yeah. Are they going to be able to meet setbacks on this, or is there going to be variance requests on that?
Nope, the setbacks will be met.
Just to share with council, I just ran some really quick napkin math here, and I think, that the TIF should run in the $200,000 to $250,000 range. The net present value of that, or what it's worth today, probably somewhere in the 140 range or 150 range. I think that's a very reasonable incentive for this type of project. I mean, if you look at what it costs today, cost per unit to build, where underlying value rentals are, I think this is a really good use of the program, in my opinion.
Thanks.
Oh, Mark?
Ty, you're a lot better at this than me, but I ran the math in my head just now because I never got around to it. And I come up with about 400,000. Is Margot Tiff still 20 years? They get to collect? No, it's 15 now.
15.
Okay.
But you've got the lag where you're really, if it all goes really well, you're going to collect probably 13 in cash flow, 13, maybe 14, depending on when you divide the taxes and all that.
I just figured they probably get 20,000 a year, right? They get back.
I used 18 because I have confidence in this council to keep pushing that mill levy down. But yeah.
Well, okay. I don't know.
Yeah.
I still think it'd be around, at least around 300. So a pretty good return.
Yeah, on the math on that, is it okay if I respond to that, Mayor? On the math on that, then if you turn around and you figure out, well, what could a guy go borrow against that to get money today, or what would its net present value be? It's been a little while since I've run the math on one, but I think it's kind of generally around 60% at today's of what that benefit's worth in today. So I had it napkined out at worth about 140 to 150,000 of net present value. So in other words, if we compared it to a regular TIF bond, it would be somewhere in that range of what it would be, because these don't bear interest. They're 0%, where a regular TIF bond has an interest rate associated with it. So if it was a regular TIF bond, you'd be looking at, that 200, whatever that number is, that $250,000 number, whatever, plus an interest accrual on it. Whereas here with the 0%, you'd be somewhere in that 150 range is what I had it mathed out at roughly. So I think it's a good demonstration of this program, because if they were going to go regular TIF, significant legal costs, hearings, public hearings, all of that, whereas here we've ended up streamlining the process significantly, and we're going to end up, if you were to do a full TIF approval on this, we're going to end up with quite a bit of differential in what the tax release would be. So I think it's a really good example of the program.
Yeah, what are the taxes now? About 17, 300?
Yeah.
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 Well, and let's not forget, they'll be collecting rents on that after about a year and a half. But yeah, with microTIF, you get a much better return because you have no interest. Well, the interest doesn't matter because you get to pay that off with your property taxes anyway. So, okay. I was just wondering.
Other questions or comments? Oh, sorry, Mark. Other questions or comments? Seeing none, calling the question on number 13. Number 13 is passed. Number 14, second reading and action on to adopt ordinance number 4178 to amend the City of North Platte Code of Ordinances, section 156042, conditional uses in an A1 transitional agricultural district to add 156.042A33, event center or special event venue. Lane?
Ordinance number 4178, an ordinance of the mayor and council of the city of North Platte, Lincoln County, Nebraska, amending chapter 156 zoning section 156.042 conditional uses, repealing all ordinances in conflict herewith, providing for the effective date and publication thereof.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Mhm.
I move to adopt ordinance number 4179, to amend the city, or the city of
7-8.
4178.
4178.
We're on 14. Oh, sorry.
It's been a long meeting.
Yeah, okay, sorry. I move to adopt number 4178 to amend the City of North Platte Code of Ordinances, section 156.042, conditional uses in an A1 transitional agricultural district to add 156.042A33, event center or special event venue on second reading.
Second.
Motion by Reeker, second by Vols. Any discussion on item number 14? Judy's back.
I just want to respectfully request that you waive the third reading on this. We do have an actual application that is ready to go forward. And if we stretch it out to a third reading, that's going to put the application back to November, which will mean council wouldn't be able to actually approve the application if it is approved until December, which will put the project out to probably spring. And they would like to get started if that's at all possible.
Mr. Mayor, I move to waive the 3 required readings on ordinance number 4178.
Second.
Motion by Vols, second by Garrick to waive the 3 readings. Any discussion on waiving the 3 readings?
Just, if I may, real quick, as Judy was stating, this will come in front of Planning Commission next week. I was absent at the last council meeting, and there was discussion about doing that then, but then Ty, you brought up that it's also go through planning, but I think this is an appropriate time to do this now. This sits in an area like Judy spoke last 2 weeks ago. In the county, this would be an automatic. It wouldn't need a conditional use. And in this case, it's far enough off a State Farm Road to the south that I just think this is a great fit for that area, and the client is ready to start construction ASAP. So,
Other questions or comments on waiving the 3 readings? Seeing none, calling the question on the amendment to waive the 3 readings. Okay, 3 readings are waived. Back to the original discussion on item number 14. Do we have any other questions on or comments on item number 14 as amended? Brad?
Just a clarifying question, Judy. This is, so as it stated last meeting, it was allowed in certain zoning, but it was a conditional use in others, and we took that away, right? Then it's just a conditional use in all 3.
So this one actually, you're moving ahead to a
Oh,
different
sorry.
item.
I
No,
apologize.
That's okay. So this one actually does not allow event venues in an ag district at all. And so this is just adding the opportunity for someone to request a conditional use to
Gotcha.
allow it in an ag district.
Thank you.
Donna?
Thank
Hold
you.
on, Judy.
Judy, how close is this to residential area?
The property owner lives right there. It's not close to residential areas at all. I would say the next closest residential structure is probably about a quarter of a mile away. So it's just right south of the Walmart DC. It's where the proposed one is going to go. This here in particular is just amending the zoning to allow it to possibly happen.
Other questions or comments? Seeing none, calling the question on item number 14, please, as amended. Item number 14 is passed as amended. Item number 15, Second reading and action on to adopt ordinance number 4179 to amend the City of North Platte Code of Ordinances, Section 156042, conditional uses in an A1 transitional agriculture district to add 156.042A32 commercial stables located outside the city limits of the City of North Platte and on a property or parcel consisting of 10.01 acres or more. Lane?
Ordinance number 4179, an ordinance of the mayor and council of the city of North Platte, Lincoln County, Nebraska, amending chapter 156, zoning section 156.042, conditional uses, repealing all ordinances in conflict herewith, providing for the effective date and publication thereof.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt ordinance number 4179 to amend the City of North Platte Code of Ordinances, Section 156.042, conditional uses in an A1 transitional agricultural district to add 156.042A32 commercial stables located outside the city limits of the City of North Platte and on a property or parcel consisting of 10.01 acres or more on second reading.
Second.
Motion by Reeker, second by Vols. Any discussion on item number 15? Judy? I can see Brad moving over there. So
I'm assuming you want to waive the 3 readings on this one also.
This one, the project that was anticipated isn't in that big of a hurry, so it's entirely your choice, but I did put that on there. So if you want to waive it, waive it. If you don't, we have time.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Lucas.
I'd move to waive the 3rd reading on this.
Second.
Motion by Lucas, second by Vols to waive the 3rd reading. Any discussion on the motion to waive the 3rd reading? Seeing none, calling the question on waiving the 3rd reading for item number 15. 3rd reading is waived on item number 15. Okay, back to item number 15. Questions or comments on item number 15? Seeing none, calling the question. Seeing none, calling the question on item number 15 as amended. Apparently discussed. Okay. Item number 15 passes as amended. Okay. Moving on to item number 16. Are you ready, Lane? Second reading and action to adopt ordinance number 4180 to amend the City of North Platte Code of Ordinances to add solar farms under supplementary regulations by adding section 156.313 commercial solar conversion systems, CSCS, regulations, solar farms. Lane?
Ordinance number 4180, an ordinance of the mayor and council of the city of North Platte, Lincoln County, Nebraska, amending chapter 156 zoning supplementary regulations, repealing all ordinances in conflict herewith, providing for the effective date and publication thereof.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Want a break? No. Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt ordinance number 4180 to amend the City of North Platte Code of Ordinances to add solar farms under supplementary regulations by adding section 156.313 commercial solar conversion systems, CSCS, regulations, parentheses, solar farms on second reading.
Second.
Motion by Lucas, second by Vols. Okay. Is this, Judy, is this the one that we altered based on the request of the council last time? Or I know we altered the 17, but is 16 altered as well?
Yes, they were both altered. This one in particular, 4180, permitted zoning districts in Part B, says permitted by conditional use in the following zones. I believe the first time it was presented as conditional use in an ag district, but then it was allowed in a industrial district by permitted by right. And so I believe we changed those to all 3 of those districts requiring conditional use.
Okay, thank you. Other questions or comments while we got Judy up here? Donna?
I guess I just want to ask a general question on these 3 issues, how is that going to affect the surrounding property values?
Well, I'm not an assessor, so I really can't tell you how it's going to affect the surrounding property values. I don't believe it will make them go down in any way, shape, or form. Solar farms probably have their own assessed value. They're clean, they're upkept, as long as the property is maintained. I don't foresee it being an issue, but again, I'm not an assessor, so I
Right,
can't tell you
okay.
that.
So could it possibly limit certain developments? I mean, venue, stable, solar farm. I don't know. Just questions that I don't have answers to, so I could see it posing a problem.
Pete, go ahead.
I was just going to say, the way I look at this is it just gives us another arrow in our quiver for potential economic development. We have the hammer because it has to come back in front of us again. But if a project, let's say we get a project in there that just needs a dozen solar panels to try and run their, so it's a self-contained electrical grid. That gives us an avenue to allow him to do that. And then we could put certain stipulations on there to where it has to be behind your building so that it's not accessible from the road, or, so that it's aesthetically pleasing. This just gives us an arrow in our economic development quiver, the way I see this, and we get the final say on it as it comes through, as Ty pointed out a couple weeks ago. So that's what I'm thinking on it.
Mr. Mayor, can I add something on that?
Go ahead.
I would tell you that I thought really long and hard about that proposed change at the last meeting, because there's probably large, prominent, national, worldwide companies that may be interested in coming to our area someday that have green energy objectives. And if the world finds out that they want to buy land in our area, they may not want to come here or do that, or the land may become more expensive and blocks them. So by putting a conditional use permit requirement in here, we're dissuading that potential buyer a little bit. But I felt like it was important at this point in time because we don't have any experience with solar farms. I think your question's a good one, Donna. I really do. And that's why, after thinking about it long and hard, I thought, we might have a prominent national company come in, not buy land and do their project because they have to come get a conditional use permit. It could block a project, but we don't know exactly what we're dealing with yet. So I think I made the comment, I thought we should walk before we run a little bit with it. And that's why I felt like we should change that to conditional use permits, and then we could reevaluate it down the road, because I don't feel like we know or have thought of side effects yet. And so this would give the council and planning commission the ability to weigh in on that. I hope it doesn't cost us a project, but it could.
I attended, and I don't know who else, here attended the public hearing that the county had at district court. It's been a couple of years ago, so, about alternative energy, and it's not a real popular thing in Nebraska or in this area. And I remember all those people that spoke, they did not like it. So I'm with the mindset, I start voting no early in the process. So that's why I vote like I do, just so people know that.
Other questions or comments? Okay. Oh, sorry, Ed, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So if we wouldn't adopt this and somebody wants to come in and put a solar farm, or like you said, Ty, they want to put in a solar farm or even some small units for their own facilities, how could we address that?
If it's not in your zoning code, it's not allowed.
Okay.
So the only way we could address it at that time would to be come back like we are now, put it back in our code or add it to our code to allow them to do it.
Okay, thank you.
And if I may, this is for solar farms. We do allow small solar panels on housing and things right now, with some stipulations. But as far as the solar farm, which takes up the certain amount of land, that this is what this is addressing. It's not addressing like just a single solar panel or something on a structure.
Is the size defined here? What is a solar farm? I mean, is that a specific number of square feet? Is it a specific number of units, or what are we talking about?
It is to generate commercial power.
To generate commercial.
Yes. So these are commercial solar farms. So if you want to put solar panels on your house, you're fine as long as your roof load can handle it. If you want to put a wind tower outside your house, as long as it can meet setbacks and meet height regulations, you can do that because it's personal. It's residential. This is your commercial power. So it would be something that somebody's going to generate electricity that can then be sold back to the grid.
So if I want to bring a manufacturing facility here and I want to have a solar farm, quote unquote, on my facility to operate at least part of the supply part of the electrical needs for my facility, does it have to be able to have power sold into the grid?
It's going to depend on how you do that. If you're a commercial business and you want to do it solely for your own use for your commercial business, then no, it would not be considered a commercial solar farm. But if you wanted to build it large enough to power your business and you want to have additional power and make it a commercial farm or commercial solar farm, then yes, it would be considered a solar farm at that point and would have to go through the conditional use permit process.
So if I'm understanding you correctly then, Judy, if I want to build a manufacturing facility and I want to use solar panels to produce part of my own electricity, I can do that under current regulation.
As long as it is your personal generation, yes.
Personal
Once it
meaning the
turns,
corporation.
yes, once it turns commercial, that you're going to sell it to other people, you're going to sell it back to the grid, you're going to let somebody else also use it, then it becomes a commercial.
Okay.
Other questions or comments? Seeing none, calling the question on item number 16, please. Item number 16 is passed. Item number 17, second reading and action on to adopt ordinance number 4181 to amend the City of North Platte Code of Ordinances, Section 156042, conditional uses in an A1 transitional agricultural district to add 156042A34, commercial solar conversion system, solar farms, provided the project conforms to provisions set forth in Section 156313 and Section 156237, conditional uses in an I1 light industrial district to add E, commercial solar conversion systems, solar farms, provided the project conforms to provisions set forth in Section 156313. Lane?
Ordinance number 4181, an ordinance of the mayor and council of the city of North Platte, Lincoln County, Nebraska, amending chapter 156 zoning, section 156.042, conditional uses, section 156.237, conditional uses, repealing all ordinances in conflict herewith, providing for the effective date and publication thereof.
Thank you.
I move to adopt ordinance number 4181 to amend the City of North Platte Code of Ordinances, Section 156.042, conditional uses in an A1 transitional agricultural district to add 156.042A34, commercial solar conversion systems, solar farms, provided the project conforms to provisions set forth in Section 156.313 and Section 156.237, conditional uses in an I1 light industrial district to add E, commercial solar conversion system, solar farms, provided the project conforms to provisions set forth in Section 156.313 on second reading.
Second.
Motion by Garrick, second by Lucas. Do we have any discussion on item number 17?
Mr. Mayor?
Ed, go ahead.
If somebody wanted to, we're in light industrial, is this going to be a detriment if there's already solar panels there, a solar farm there? Is this going to be a detriment to other companies wanting to build next to it? I mean.
Any
we've
ideas,
had-
Judy? I don't know.
I agree with you, Ty, when you said earlier, I don't think we really know what the ramifications of this whole thing is. I've read where they seem to give off a whole lot of heat. And so I don't know what all that means. How's that going to impact if somebody else wants to build something next to one of these facilities?
Again, I think that's a good idea that Ty had about making these all conditional uses, so you can look at each one of them as they come forward. I don't get too concerned about it in industrial areas, a light industrial or a heavy industrial, because they're next to a manufacturing plant. They're next to something that gives off noise. They're next to something that may give off odor. But I don't see that industrial company that's coming in is going to be really offended by a 5-acre solar farm. I don't think that would stop them from building there. But again, I can't predict the future. I can't tell you 100% for sure. But in an industrial area, it doesn't seem like it would be any more intrusive than some of the manufacturing that goes on in those industrial areas.
Thanks, Judy. Other questions or comments?
I have a comment.
Oh, go ahead, Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When you said that, Ed, it just suddenly popped in my head that it could have an effect. I mean, if you have a manufacturing plant, you would have to have some kind of huge setback or height restrictions so it did not interfere with the function of that solar farm. I could see where that could happen. So it is a good question. It's something to think about.
Casting a shadow over on.
Yeah, I mean, at certain times of the day. I mean, it's a possibility.
Mayor Kelleher, I mean, you guys, this is like ancient aliens, you know, what if, what if? This solar farm technology is all over the country. This isn't something new. If you want to find those answers, go research it. I'm sure there's other communities. Kearney has solar farms now. They could tell you where there's a problem. I think their idea of conditional use is right, but, you know, solar farm, it's coming, guys.
Well, you don't have to worry about me because I'm
you know,
against it.
I know we're not putting kerosene anymore. I mean, it's just coming. I mean, that's just the way life is. And I think it's something we have to know that it's coming and adapt to, and we'll deal with these issues when they come up, you know?
I would just say, as far as the question, I can't answer that, but I have not had peer cities, and I don't think Judy probably has either in any of our conferences that we go to where anyone's brought up that it's been a detriment. I mean, usually when things happen and all of a sudden it's a detriment, there's seminars and things on that, but I have not had that, but you know, doesn't mean it may not have been, but I have not had any of our peer cities mention that that's been a problem with these things that have these in place. So
And quite frankly, that was a response that I was hoping that someone would have that has some experience that knows of any detrimental aspects of it.
I haven't heard anything detrimental. The only thing when we were writing this ordinance that a couple of communities said was make sure that you have a decommissioning plan in there. And that's just a decommissioning plan, which is what we have in the regulations that basically say if they abandon the property or they decide it's not going to work, to force them to actually remove the solar panels from the property. And we've got one in there, so I think we protected ourselves pretty well.
Other comments or questions? Seeing none, calling the question, item number 17. Item number 17 is passed. Item number 18. Adopt the resolution approving claims and authorizing the issuance of 2 warrants to Nebraska Department of Transportation in the amounts of $512,257.32 and $731,443.44. 1 warrant to Paulson Inc. in the amount of $15,175.50. 1 warrant to Level LLC in the amount of $10,768.04. 1 warrant to ATC Group Services LLC in the amount of $2,360, and 1 warrant to Simon Contractors in the amount of $55,971.75 to pay approved claims and referring to and incorporating the terms and conditions of ordinance number 4378 relating to warrant financing.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the resolution authorizing the issuance of 6 warrants as presented in the materials.
Second.
Motion by Reeker, second by Bowles. Any discussion on item number 18? Ed?
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, Pete, Ty. You don't even look alike.
They're both wearing blue shirts, though.
They are.
Yeah, okay.
The Simon Contractors, I believe that was for the overpass. Did they not do as much work as we had anticipated them doing, or I thought we were gonna probably spend a lot more money than that?
This, from my understanding, this is just a partial of all that project. But there was some work that the city ended up doing itself, and then also some things they subcontracted out on that project.
Okay, all right. So the subcontracted portions would be reflected in this warrant?
No, they'd be in some different warrants.
Okay, so Simon wasn't the general on the project?
I can't answer that with certainty, and unfortunately Brent's not here. I don't remember exactly how that project was
doesn't
broken
matter.
out.
Don't worry about it. Yep. They need to be paid.
We could get a definition for you at the next meeting, Ed. That's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Ty?
Mr. Mayor, I just need to ask to remove myself due to the potential for conflict of interest.
Record show, Councilman Lucas abstained. Other questions or comments on item number 18? Seeing none, calling the question on item number 18, please. Item number 18 is passed. We have a public hearing on number 19 to consider adopting the resolution regarding the City of North Platte, Nebraska micro-TIF blight substandard study, LCCDC, as prepared by the City of North Platte, and approval of related actions. I'm opening the public hearing officially. Anyone would like to make a comment, please approach the microphone, tell us who you are, and make your comment. We will wait 5 more seconds. No one is moving in the audience.
Move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Closed public hearing by Councilman Garrick and seconded by Councilman Reeker, I think. Was that right? Okay. Calling the question and closing the public hearing. Public hearing is closed. Council will now consider adopting the resolution regarding the City of North Platte, Nebraska micro-TIF blight substandard study, LCCDC, as prepared by the City of North Platte, and approval of related actions.
Move to adopt the resolution as presented in council materials regarding the City of North Platte, Nebraska micro-TIF blight and substandard study, LCCDC, as prepared by the City of North Platte, and approval of related actions.
Second.
Motion by Garrick, second by Flanders. Do we have any discussion on item number 19? Seeing none, calling the question on item number 19, please. Item number 19 is passed. Item number 20, approve the claims.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the claims.
Second.
Motion by Reeker, second by Nisley to approve the claims. Calling the question and approving the claims, please. Claims are approved. Thank you. Public agenda request. We respect our city employees' request that any complaints, criticisms of employees not be aired at a public meeting. Concerns about employees should be brought to the attention of the mayor or the city administrator. Individuals in violation will be declared out of order. Anyone has a public agenda request item, please come to the podium. Everyone is leaving, so I don't think that's going to be a problem. One quick announcement. The council, we will almost assuredly have a special meeting on 10/29, so 2 weeks from today. It's to approve, likely to approve some road construction. Okay, we will send out the proper notifications, of course, but it's likely to occur, so please mark it on your calendar. Mr. Reeker.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adjourn.
Mr. Move.
It's time to go.
It's time to go.
Okay, let the meeting end.
I don't know where he's been
Motion by
today.
Reeker, second by Nisley, to adjourn the meeting, calling the question adjournment. And the meeting is over. Thank you, everyone. Probably see you in 2 weeks.
I think I hear your voice on the radio at the disclaimer on all these ads.